Some folks have a strange idea of entertainment.
Hey, buddy.
Ready to podcast?
Let's do this.
Upstairs.
Oh, yeah.
Are you nervous?
I am.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. It's the first time talking to anybody who's been in anything. Really.
Okay, let's get this done, man.
Let's go.
How's that? You come in yet?
There
There we go.
Perfect.
See, I don't need my wife to do this. I can do it myself.
Right on.
Okay.
So talk to me a little bit about this podcast so I know what I'm talking about.
Well, first, CJ, welcome to Two Guys on Friday. Thanks for being here.
Who's Kevin?
I'm Kevin.
Great. Who's Mark?
Front
And I'm
center.
Mark.
Got it. So I got to remember, Mark's on my left and Kevin's on my right.
All right.
I got to apologize off the bat because apparently time zones don't work well with me. It was an ordeal with your wife setting this up.
Yeah, well,
That was my fault. That was my
yeah,
fault.
well, I always tell her she's got to let everybody know because in about a month and a half when we go to daylight savings, we even change from the West Coast because we don't change in Arizona.
Okay.
So it's 6 o'clock here, but next month it'll be 7 o'clock in California, West Coast.
Okay.
Okay.
So when we fly to Las Vegas, we've got to take all that into consideration. We drive 100 miles due west. We've got to let, okay, we got to leave a certain amount of time to catch the plane, otherwise we miss the plane.
Right.
Gotcha.
So,
Way to confuse me more.
no problem.
Can you hear us okay?
Yep.
Awesome.
Okay, let's get this going. So,
You sound great, Kevin.
thanks. So obviously the fan film Vengeance is coming out soon, and you play Jason's father, Elias. And originally in part 6, he was supposed to be introduced. Why was it cut out of the script?
That was a Tom McLaughlin decision. Tom has always been a very big fan of the Friday the 13th series, horror in general. And
Okay.
Tom, you may or may not know, Tom has a new script that he's written.
I do know that, yeah.
For the resurrection of Jason, so to speak. I believe it's called Jason Never Dies.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
So
So what's going on with that then?
Well, that's his thing. I mean, I can only regurgitate what he's telling us
Okay.
about it.
Fair enough.
He completed the script. I understand that. It's shot. I believe how he's going to do it. It's Camp Crystal Lake. However, it's in the winter and everything is snowed and iced over.
Oh,
Oh,
nice. That's
interesting.
what you always wanted.
Yeah.
The way I understand it from just some of the things I read and talking to Tom via text is that nobody's ever done anything with the snow. And the cool thing about the snow is the red and how blood is going to show in snow. And Jason, I assume, I'm speculating, coming through the ice during the winter months because they don't have summer camp. So I think there's going to be some type of configuration where they put together, maybe there's a ski resort nearby and everybody comes down to the camp and, Jason pops through the ice and goes to work, so to speak.
Okay.
But going back to your first part of the question, yes. I mean, Tom had his concept originally was to have Elias Voorhees introduced, never really materialized, and I don't know the reason why that is. Tom also had thought of even putting a Cheech and Chong into the series.
Oh, really?
So Tom is very creative. He's a very intelligent man. So I don't know why he took it out or why it wasn't. It's not in the script that I received. I received the script it's called Terror Incorporation, and it had nothing even to mention of Elias. So it may have been back in the early era of talking to the script, but it never hit the actual script itself.
Okay.
Okay. A couple of our favorite scenes from part 6 are the head smash in the RV, as well as the fist, the hand through the chest right at the beginning.
Correct.
Is there anything that you can tell us about these scenes? And
Like what type of work went into making these?
Yeah.
Well, the unfortunate thing is in 1986, what is done today was considered X-rated in '86.
Mhm.
So the scenes were much more gory. The heart coming out of the chest was actually pumping blood into the air as it
Oh,
squirted,
no way.
and all that had to be cut out. And that was because for Tom to get to a R-17, he had to take out a lot of the blood. So that scene was much more horrific, as were quite a few of the scenes squeezing the deputy's head. Unfortunately, again, to get it out on an R-17, they had to take all that out. Now, in those days, old school, they used to just cut the tape, drop it on the ground, and sweep it up, put it in the garbage. In today's digital world, everything is saved and can be rebooted, director's cut, 5, 10, 15, 20 years later. Unfortunately, none of that exists. Otherwise, it'd be great for Tom to be able to put together a director's cut with all the gore in it. Second part of your question, as far as the RV, Darcy is an amazing actress, not to mention a stunt woman at the end of the day. She trusted me to physically take her head and smash it towards a camera lens at full force and stop as, I got right up to the camera. So what that means is it was just a full, and she
I'm
allowed
jumpy,
me to
man.
do that. See? But doing it, from her perspective, here I am holding her head and throwing it into a camera lens and stopping 3-4 inches away. So she had a lot of trust in me, and thank goodness I had good eyesight. So, and then when we got into the actual fight scene inside, which was a then makeshift urinal bathroom, she just kicked the shit out of me and had a great time. She really went for it. She got some bruises too, though, because I had a good grip on her so that I could control her so she wouldn't get hurt. But she went crazy, and she'll tell you she kicked ass.
That's
Right
awesome.
on.
So your first scene, talking about the RV, that was your first scene as Jason, I believe, in the film?
Actually, my first scene will always, everybody asks me what's my favorite scene. And quite honestly, my favorite scene is the first scene that I participated in, which happens to be, the very beginning of the RV, where profile of Jason comes in, the RV is rocking behind it. Jason turns and does that little tilt of the head,
Yeah.
and then walks towards the RV. That was my first ever being on a set, and the first moment I got to put on the wardrobe and become Jason.
What was that like?
Well, I don't know what it was like, because at that time it was just a job. It didn't resonate as it's become today iconically. For me personally, it was just a great experience to think, wow, I'm in a real movie. And I had no idea nor intent when I went to Los Angeles to become an actor and do commercials and those different things. And here I am in a major movie with Paramount Studios. So flabbergasted, totally just stoked about the whole thing at that time. But it really didn't resonate till 20 years later. And the image became so iconic that it's worldwide now.
Were you staying away from the actors when you were in costume? I know some of the actors like to do that.
Yeah, I didn't do it deliberately. My good friend Kane Hodder, he stayed completely away from everybody for the walking on the set was powerful. I didn't do it deliberately. When I did Jason, you have to remember, part 6 is where Jason stepped into the role and became, in my opinion, the principal to the film. Up to that point, the principals were all the actors and actresses and the camp counselors as they were. Jason was just a figure in the background of the forest. Yeah. Part 6, Jason came out of the woodwork, no pun intended, and kind of became the iconic role it is today, 34 years later.
Right. One of my favorite things about Part 6 is the soundtrack. If you could tell us about your experience with Alice Cooper, because if it wasn't for Alice Cooper doing the soundtrack, I would have never heard of Alice Cooper. Like, it was that movie that got me into Alice Cooper, and just fed off it. Like, Constrictor was the first album that I had, and that had almost all the songs from the soundtrack on there.
Yeah, the interesting thing about Alice Cooper is, I'll age myself. He was my very first concert I ever went to in about 1972, and it was called Welcome to My Nightmare. So my very first concert was Alice Cooper, and then in 1986 to be working with him was, in itself an experience. I just had a photo op with him maybe 2 or 3 months ago. I was in full wardrobe, and then Alice Cooper and fans were in between us taking photos at a convention that we did together. The cool thing about Alice Cooper is he's still rocking and rolling today. He just went on tour recently. He does hang out with the Hollywood Vampires, which is the Johnny Depp, the Nose of the world. But he's really a great guy. I don't play golf, but I understand he's a scratch golfer. I talked to the man. He's in Phoenix, Arizona. His manager, Bob, is a friend of mine, and I've worked right next to him at conventions, and he is just as down to earth as you could imagine when you walk up to the table. He's just very enthusiastic about who he is and his career of 4 decades plus.
Yeah.
Maybe you can give him Mark's number.
Yeah, let Mark go rock and roll on him, right? Well,
Yeah.
I think one of the things about Friday the 13th Part 6 also that I always tell the fans, because they always ask things, and I think Part 6, again, being the pivotal point of the Jason character, and I'm not boasting, I just think it was done well by Tom McLaughlin, Tommy Matthews, and the crew just did an amazing job. But the very first part is you've got the James Bond opening.
Yes.
Yes.
And then you've got the coming back to life like Frankenstein of the 60 werewolf type Universal monsters. Then I get to wear a Batman utility belt.
That's true. Yeah.
And I get to have a rock and roll Hall of Famer do the music, Man Behind the Mask, and he's back. So at the end of the day, how cool is that for Jason Lives, Friday the 13th, which is the 1986 version? And in my opinion, I think it's a nice pivotal point for what's materialized over the years.
For sure. Like, really, up until that movie, there was really no recognizable songs within the soundtracks of any of the other movies. And I gotta say, one of my favorite photos of you and Alice is where he's got the goalie mask,
Yes.
and you've got Alice's mask, like with the painted up face. Like, I've got it on a bootleg tape.
Yeah, I still have that little Polaroid, as a matter of fact.
Oh, really?
I have some cool ones I don't think have ever been out in the public, which are me and Alice standing full body, and I'm holding a pitchfork, which is kind of weird, that gothic look. And Alice is holding a weapon also, and it's a black and white. And I do have that in 8x10. I just never put it out there. But I think I'm going to make a couple copies and send it over to Bob, Alice Cooper's manager, for his conventions that he does, because we do exchange photos all the time at the different conventions. Alice signs some, gives them to me, and then I'll sign some, give them back, so we can sell each other's pictures already pre-autographed by the opposite at our tables.
That's
Right
awesome.
on.
So we all know Friday the 13th, not happening anytime soon, a reboot of any kind. But thankfully we have fan films, and you're going to be in one soon here.
Right.
How were you approached to star in Vengeance?
Well, Jeremy Brown, he's the director, producer, reached out to me and asked if I would participate. He was looking for the connectivity of going through Part 6 into what could have been a Part 7. He'd already selected Jason Brooks to play Jason, who's done a marvelous job. And I looked at it objectively, and originally it was just supposed to be some bits and pieces of Elias Voorhees in the background, kind of like a shadow, you know. Then all of a sudden it materialized into where I killed 5 or 6 people and became a front and center of the background. The cool thing about it is it worked out well. Jason Brooks and I are very equal in size. I might be a couple days older than him, but at the end of the day, it really worked out as far as how I look. They had me grow a beard for about 4 months, so I had a good 1.5 inch beard. And my beard is silver naturally. And then we had this really cool wig made by a hairstylist here in Kingman, and Teresa. And what they did is they put that on me, and with that beard, and greased me up and put me in a long leather jacket. I looked really retro and kind of looked like a redneck from the woods.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you could tell there was a characteristic carryover from Part 6 into Elias Voorhees. So now you kind of see the domination of the DNA of why Jason Part 6 has that look, because of me playing Elias Voorhees. So it kind of really brings it all together.
Okay.
And with Vengeance, like, is there a little bit more of an understanding of where Elias has been, or any kind of backstory?
You know, it's interesting. I have a photo here. I mean, I don't know if you can see this on your screen.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. I'll put it up
There
like
you
that.
go.
And as you can see, characteristic-wise, we're the same size.
Yeah.
And what it kind of does in the actual filming is they talked about the grief of Jason's father of losing his son, and that he has been gone and just kind of disappeared into the woods. He kind of just reappears because if we go back to the Jason concept of the DNA of similarities. So all of a sudden he comes to check on a funeral, which he's at the cemetery. And the interesting, because I don't want to give you too much, is that Tom McLaughlin, writer director of Part Six, was kind enough to do a little consulting for this film, and he actually has a part playing the cemetery caretaker. And him and I exchange words as Elias Voorhees and him the caretaker. And I'll let it go at that. I think the really other thing that's really cosmetically cool about this is Steve Dash is in it, who played Jason
Right.
in Friday the 13th Part 2.
Mhm.
The real Jason, as he would say if he was so I want to make sure I keep it represented correctly. And he might call you a four-letter word or two also. But Steve is in it. Steve plays the sheriff, and he gets whacked by Elias. Kind of
Oh,
interesting.
cool.
So, but it comes back where Jason basically comes back, basically carrying the rock out of the lake and goes back to work, so to speak. So I think it's got some good characteristics. There are a couple dozen kills in it by Jason, and
Couple
then
dozen?
I have a couple dozen,
Wow.
and then I have 5 or 6. So,
I
and there's
remember that when they were doing their campaigning, raising money, they're like, we need buckets and buckets of blood.
and they used buckets.
Can't wait.
But I will say the fan film, and again, I'm not an expert at it, has been put together well. It's a full feature film. I understand distribution is going to be this month of it. We're also doing we're going to Blairstown next month for Friday the 13th for an East Coast premiere, so to speak. Even though it'll already be out, it'll be a private showing at Blairstown, New Jersey, is where the original Part 1 was shot. And Thursday night, this is Friday night, but Thursday night, another good friend of mine, Ari Lehman, will be there, who played Jason in Part 1. And, you know, Ari has, again, had just a tremendous career where he's done everything with bands and music and working with community centers. And his band will be playing on Thursday, September 12th. And then we go into Friday the 13th, which there'll be a theater that they're renting to show the premiere.
Right on. So the setting of Vengeance, like you said, takes place in the wintertime. Whereabouts did you guys film a majority of Vengeance?
Okay, so Vengeance, so we don't confuse them, is...
Oh, sorry.
No, that was
Tom McLaughlin's, right.
Yeah, that's okay. You know, Mark, I'm going to have to talk to you off screen a little bit.
You're
But,
fired, man.
the
But
thing
how
about
long
this-
after Part 6 does this take place then?
Well, it's interpretable because Jason comes out of the water. The kids are at a camp and they start talking. Everything's been renamed and hush hush. And Tommy Matthews, which is, Tom's daughter, is the one that takes the lead in this one. And she's back visiting the camp, which no longer exists. And so theoretically, you have Jason come out of the water carrying the rock.
Right.
So in theory, it's interpretable. 10 years, 15 years. You know, you have to take interpretation that the father is still alive. So it can't be, I would have speculated a decade, because
Okay.
each one of them seems to carry through a different generation.
Okay.
So, but
What
I
were your
think,
experiences like? So you work for the Hollywood film companies and then the small films. Which do you like better? Are there pros and cons to them both? Or
I didn't see a difference personally because I went to go to work. I gave them the same 110% that I would have given Tom McLaughlin because my name is attached to it. So, I was actually extremely impressed with the quality of everything that was done because so many people had contributed their time without pay to do these things. That includes set designers, cameramen, camera women, directors, assistant directors. They had some of the top-notch cameras. Now, you got to realize in 1986, VHS was still popular. In today's digitalized world, HD is 100% there, and they had full first class cameras, coverage, 2 cameras shooting, everything from POVs, point of views, drones with the technology we have today.
Yeah.
So it really, I was impressed. I mean, I was really pleasantly pleased. I didn't know what to expect. And of course, they well exceeded their original amount that they asked for and have continued to receive money. This past weekend, they were at, I believe it's Steel City Con, and they had representation there. Jason Brooks, who plays Jason Avengers, was there, and they brought more money back for the Shriners Children's Hospital of Seattle.
That's so awesome.
Right on.
Myself and Steve Dash both, neither one of us took any salary. We donated our 2 week salary to the Shriners Children's Hospital burn unit specifically, which you may know that's very dear to Kane Hodder's heart,
Yes.
the burn units,
Yes.
because of his tragedy, several decades ago with a burn that went bad.
That's so awesome of you guys.
No doubt. You don't hear about that very often. We're basically working for free, right? Like,
Well, we're, Steve Dash and myself are, in good spaces, so to speak. So to us right now, it's like, I think it's important to play it forward where you can.
Right.
I try to do some of the events in town where I live where they do trick and trunk, it's called, where all the cars come down and park at the bowling alley, and open their trunk for trick or treat for the kids. Well, they give me a booth there, and I sign autographs for the kids and take selfies. This past Halloween, we went up to the fire department up on the hill, Hualapai Mountains, and did a thing for the fire department for donations and stuff for free. So I think it's more important. Steve Dash had the same opinion, though. Again, he's passed, but he was in a good space. So he liked to get out there and shake hands. The fans, if we didn't have the fans, we wouldn't have the notoriety that we currently have.
mm-hmm.
So if Friday the 13th ever gets settled, where do you want to see the franchise go?
Well, it's easy to be an armchair quarterback, if that makes sense to you, because I can talk after the play. And everybody knows what the quarterback should have done. And they always say how dumb the quarterback is for not doing it.
Yeah.
But they weren't in the live action, to be fair, nor am I. However, if I was involved, coming from a business perspective, I think they should bring a cast in for multiple Friday the 13th and shoot maybe 3 in a row with the same Jason for characteristic purposes with a new cast and different directors, but the scripts should follow each other.
Yeah.
We've learned a lot since those days with the Harry Potters.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a script that has some consistency and connectivity, same thing with the one Jason, whoever you may put into that costume, then you could distribute one immediately and put the other 2 on the shelf, and every 18 months send one out.
I think that's what they did with Lord of the Rings too, where they
Same
filmed
thing.
everything, and then they, like you said, after a few years they released each one.
And we've learned a lot. So I hope they learn from that. Mr. Cunningham, Mr. Miller, they have their differences and they both have their rights to a point. I agree. I hope they don't let it go long enough where the fans start to retaliate and forget, because they wouldn't be having this argument if it wasn't for the fans. And
Exactly.
success, to be fair. Now, remember, I ran casino resorts for 25 years, chief operating officer, general manager. So I'm looking at this from a business perspective, not personally involved. But I always remember who put me in those positions, my employees, my team members that made me look good and work hard so we can meet our expectations and our numbers. In this case, it's the same concept. The fans have put you, the iconic image worldwide has a result of all the fans' contribution and their love for the character. So
Right.
Hopefully we can get the 2 together conceptually and get it out there. And, let's see what happens. I mean, the franchise is strong. It's unfortunate we haven't had one since 2009. Derek Mears did a great job, another great guy. So I'm really in good company with all 9 gentlemen that have played the Jason. There are still 7 of us that are alive. But I'm in a good space with all of them. And when I do see them periodically at a show, we're part of a very elite group of people, actors, stuntmen, that have the privilege of being Jason on Friday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
Right on.
Would you say, getting back to Vengeance for a second, would you say that there's room for a sequel for Vengeance?
You know there is, and the reason I say that is because the ending, and I'll let it go at that. Again, they thought it through. So the ending has where what happened? You thought, but you have an interpretable process. You could say, well, wait a minute. There's no proof. So where does it leave us? So I think there's a strong opportunity, but I'm also keeping my fingers crossed. Tom McLaughlin, still has a lot of clout in Hollywood, Paramount Studios, Warner Brothers. He's, good friends with Mr. Miller and Mr. Cunningham. Maybe he can be the mender, the Band-Aid to bring everybody together with a script that I hope is outstanding as Tom is as a human being, that they go, wow, we've never done something in the snow. We've never done something for 10 years. What if we agree to disagree and we shoot this one to keep the soup hot, and then we'll go back to court going forward? Just talking out loud, right?
Yeah, that's right. Because like movies like Vengeance, like it's quite interesting. Obviously, there's still demand. Like we're waiting and waiting and waiting. Back in 2018, before Halloween was coming out, the whole thing they said The Ring was the reason there wasn't a Friday the 13th. So clearly, like we're all hungry on seeing it and stuff like that. But it's so nice to see these fan films come out that you said keeps the soup hot. Doesn't really pique interest, but it keeps the Friday the 13th name alive, really, until there's something major.
Yeah, I think it keeps everybody engaged. And surprisingly enough, I think it also puts the studios on notice that you better come up with some quality, because fan films, again, with today's technology, are pretty damn good.
Yeah.
If fan films come out with this type of editing, going back to Vengeance, another part you may or may not know, Henry Mancini, who's done all the music for the Fridays, allowed Jeremy Brown and his crew, his people, to use his music for Vengeance.
Nice.
Now that's pretty impressive. You've got Steve Dash, Tom McLaughlin as a consultant, myself, Harry Mancini allowing you to use his music. I would say them are just showing their respect, but also the quality of this film that's being put out by Jeremy Brown, the director.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
And there's been a couple others out there earlier in the last few years, and I think this also puts them on notice that they need to step it up again and again. Or, Vengeance could be a flop, and the last two prior to this that have been fan films will get higher recognition. Hopefully, it'll be more successful, and it just keeps us all on our toes.
For sure.
I saw the trailer, man. It looks pretty awesome.
I was impressed when that trailer came over and they sent me that sneak preview, and I was like, it was confidential at the moment. I'm like, wow, this is that drone coming over the mountains, and they started singing. I'm like, wow, this is pretty good.
And face to face with Jason, that was epic.
Yeah, and that is, and that's near the end of the film, and there's a small conflict between father and son, and it leaves it interpretable for going back to Vengeance Return or Vengeance 2, whatever you want to call it, for Jeremy Brown to raise his camera again and say action.
Mm-hmm.
Can't wait.
Is there just a couple of quick, small personal questions? Not too personal, though.
All right, Mark. Keep it clean, Mark.
Do you have
Kevin, I'm glad he's sitting next to you, buddy.
Maybe I'm glad I'm sitting next to him.
I have to slap him, man. Come on.
Do you have a favorite Friday movie other than Part 6?
Are there others?
Damn. I know your little brother was in 4 of them. I gotta buy
some of those. Pay attention, I guess.
Your little brother was in 4 of them.
Yeah, you know what? And I will say I think I liked 7 and I did like 8. I always pick on Kane, and when we pick, sometimes people try to take it out the context out of what we're saying. We're playing, and they try to want to make it like a Katy Perry, Taylor Swift thing or something. I don't know, but I think that's just people trying to rub because of interpretation. And with the social media platform, everybody has an opinion and an interpretation. I say purple, you say green. Yeah. And before you know it was yellow. So, Kane and I razz each other. Kane loves to call me, hey, BJ! And I'm like, yeah, what do you need? People go, is that mean? Isn't he being mean? I don't take it in a negative way because I laugh at him and I always say, well, he is my little brother. And at the end of the day, he's still my friend. I respect what he's done. Kane has told a lot of people, as I have, I was originally slotted for part 7. You may or may not know
I
that.
did not know that.
And, even Kane talks about it when we had a panel last week. It's just that there was a lot of stunt work. It was going forward. Paramount Studios was satisfied with my performance. However, Kane loves horror movies, and he'll tell you he really wanted to get into that horror side of it, and he had worked with John before, the writer-director. So he had to go to John to convince John, and then John had to go to Paramount to convince Paramount to make that switch. But I will tell you, in all honesty, I couldn't have done what Kane has done. Kane, doing 4 of them, has been a great ambassador for the franchise, for the iconic image. He is out, and I'm not exaggerating, 3 out of 4 weeks a month at conventions. Right now, I know for a fact he's doing 11 conventions in 12 weeks.
Wow.
Because I just saw him a few weeks ago and he was on that roll. So he's out there promoting, the Jason, the hockey mask, more than I ever could have done because I wouldn't have put that much effort into it. He's my hero at the same time, and I'm appreciative for all of his hard work because he's allowed me to retire from running casinos and be able to jump on and say, hey, I was fortunate enough to do part 6, which is a popular piece in the series. And, I go out and do a convention here and there and have fun and meet the fans. So, I appreciate what Kane has done, but then again, I appreciate what Ari did. He was just a young man and had no idea, almost 40 years later, that he's still kicking butt and taking names.
Yeah.
And another person who's just an entertainer from the word go. I mean, the guy's got bands, he can play the piano, he sings. Again, he does the charitable things, so he's right there. And you look at Ted White. Ted is in his early 90s. And, Ted will tell you, because I've been on panels with him, that he's done 200 films as a stuntman and or an actor, but everybody knows him because of Jason.
Yeah.
And it's strange when you think about it. It really is. We put a hockey mask on. Nobody saw our face. We did not speak. However, if you show a hockey mask to anybody in the world and say Friday the 13th, they'll say Jason.
Yeah.
Right.
Very true.
Speaking of conventions, how did you get into doing conventions?
Well, my first convention was probably in 1988 or 89. It was in New Jersey. It was myself, Kane, and Lar Park Lincoln.
Okay.
We did that because part 7 had just come out. And that was at the very beginning of what's materialized into just conventions everywhere. So I did one here and there because I was in the casino industry and I really couldn't commit to go doing the shows. So I tried to do 1 or 2 a year over the years to keep my name out there, keep it active, and have fun at it. And then when I retired a couple of years ago, the market had grown to where 2 weeks ago I was in London at the London
That's
Film
right.
and Comic Con, well over 100,000 people. You had everybody from Jason, Aquaman, to Charlie Sheen, to Lee Majors. It was just unbelievable. Myself, Kane, David Werewolf from London, all the guys from some of the karate movies, Karate Kid. So
Okay.
It was amazing. All the different actors and actresses that are there, and 100,000 fans. It was amazing. I was just kind of like, I was in awe myself, to be quite honest.
That's awesome. How do you like Canada? You were here in June. That's where we met you.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to Ontario. If I say that right. Did I say it right? Ontario?
Good enough.
Good enough.
Hey?
Ontario.
Ontario. Okay, yeah. I'm going there in October.
Okay.
Niagara Falls, right?
Yeah, Niagara
Yeah.
Falls show, Hampton, I think. And when I met you guys up in Calgary, I was there about a year ago, and the guy that has the show was originally slotted to have Steve Dash come up and Kane Hodder, because I don't like to do a show 2 years in a row. But he called me. Dan called and said, we lost, Steve, and this was in like February. Would you mind coming back again? And it's going to be you and Kane in full wardrobe. And I said, sure, no problem. And it was just as successful as it was a year ago. So that property has really started to grow with its success, as have all the horror cons and comic cons.
Yeah.
and a mixture of cosplay and horror and tattooing is right there with it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So if you're coming to Canada, have you ever had a poutine?
Say what?
A poutine.
Poutine.
No, isn't that a nasty word?
French fries, gravy, and cheese curds. The cheese curds melt in the gravy. It's amazing.
Dude, you got to try it.
Yeah, you
When
know
you're
what?
on
I gotta watch my girly figure. All right. I mean, you guys. I mean, a lot of people laugh, but let's see, we did the movie in '86. In '87, I was in Culver City at a place called Chippendales that I used to work at, and I remember we took the crew and we went up to Edmonton, north of
That's
y'all.
where we are, yeah.
Yeah, Edmonton. There was a bar up there called the American Bar and Grill back in the late '80s, and I remember we went up there and we performed up there. So we had a residency up there for like a month.
Oh wow.
Wow.
So I didn't know about the French fries then, but somebody should have told me. That's when Gretzky was still a superstar. On the ice, of course, he's still a superstar today, but on the ice.
Yeah.
Okay, we want to hear about how much you love the poutine, okay?
You can't say that on TV,
One more quick question for me. So Mark and I have been to Monster Mania twice. Well, me twice, him once.
Mhm.
Which is by far the best one to go to? We're thinking of the one in Texas, Texas Frightmare.
Texas Frightmare and Monster Mania are the two largest horror conventions in the United States.
Okay.
I will tell you that Dave Hagen has been doing Monster Mania much longer in longevity wise, and now he's expanded where he does 2 a year, and he's doing one up in Maryland in October that I'll be attending. So I think it's real proximity to you, which one that you want to go to, because they both have equality. Now, Texas Frightmare does expand out a little bit because it has the tattooing
Okay.
going on, and they have some other actors and actresses that aren't specifically horror. But those are the two majors in the big world here. Lloyd has his Texas Frightmare, another great guy, promoter, marketeer, and then of course Dave with the Monster Mania. But those are two of the top guns, period, in the United States. And then if you want to get into Comic Cons, they're all starting to grow significantly.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's trying to do what has been recreated in San Diego with 250,000 people going there every year. I don't know if it ever get to that point, but I will tell you the London Comic Con with over 100,000, I was pretty impressed with that one. They're definitely on their way.
That's
Right
awesome.
on.
Anything else for you?
One
Bob?
last question for me. When you're not doing conventions, what do you do to occupy your time?
Yeah. What are your hobbies?
I talked to you guys on your podcast. I have a ranch in Arizona, so I've got horses, so I shovel shit every day and feed the horses and saddle them up and ride. Occasionally, I get put off the horse. When I was young, I used to be able to tuck and roll. Now I just hit the ground and go thump. My wife and I also have alpacas,
Okay.
and we have 3 or 4 beehives. So I do have beehives. I go out there and I get stung every once in a while when I start, harvesting honey. So my downtime is really just doing stuff on the ranch as a cowboy. I mean, when I get done here, I'm putting a shirt back on, a cowboy hat, my boots, and I'm going outside to get the horses fed for the night and make sure everybody's settled in. And I think it's about 100 degrees here right now, so it's still pretty hot.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, that's really what I do on my downtime. And I enjoy myself doing 6, 7, 8, 10 cons a year. I don't want to do any more than that, and it's unfortunate. I turned 2 down today for October because I've already pre-booked something else, and I'd like to do more, but I'm retired. I mean, I don't want to also wear out my welcome with our fans. I mean, I did one. Again, I think it was a decent one, but I'm hoping that I can get some longevity where they appreciate me for a few more years instead of saying, I've already seen the guy.
Oh, you're not going anywhere, man.
I will tell you, I will answer one question for you that you may or may not. I've been asked multiple times, about would I do it again since I'm retired, because I was approached back with Friday versus Freddy by an agent that had worked with me before, but I wasn't going to leave my job running casino resorts. I had 2,500 employees depending on me to make good choices for their paychecks. I wasn't going to run out and make a couple dollars doing a movie and then be unemployed. But I will tell you now, I'm still pretty physical, as you may see. You know, I mean, you know, I think I can hang with the best of them. I mean, I look at it as, you know, it's part of it's mental and part of it's physical. But, you know, I'm still 6'3", 250, so I think I can walk down the pipe. But if it was a good script, you were asking about what I would like to see. If it's a good script and I feel I could deliver as good a product as Part 6 or better, I'd seriously entertain it.
Mhm.
But if the script was goofy, you know, I don't want to go to space. You know,
No,
Yeah.
I love you guys. I just don't want to go to space.
we
But I
try to forget that movie.
and I want to be able to perform at the highest level of personal integrity, where they don't look at me as a professional athlete coming back trying to play another season and it's a flop.
Mhm.
So again, if I can't do it and deliver, I'll pass. Now, like I said, very beginning of this interview, to me, it's really more about I'm in a good space. I don't want to abuse it, but if I could deliver a product today in part 13, because that's what it will be, and you know what? Things could be different at that time because that would be a nice closer for me. You did part 6, you did part 13, and you know, I've already been blessed to have my mark with the Friday the 13th series, but that would definitely solidify. And then to be able to say you did a fan film playing Elias Voorhees, that's pretty cool.
And the sequel, right?
And I'll go on record saying if I was asked to come back into the sequel, I'd do it for them because Jeremy Brown's just a great man. His whole Jason Brooks, who played Jason, also worked doing some of the directing and some of the script writing. They have put their hearts and soul to this film well over a year. Now, I've been fortunate today and yesterday. I've seen a rough of the movie, so I've got an idea, and they're still doing some editing, but I was pretty impressed. It keeps moving. There's no boredom in it whatsoever. And, you know, there's a lot of blood. There's heads coming off. There's arms coming off. They've pretty much embraced everything that's transpired historically and put it into one film.
100% practical?
What's that?
100% practical?
They did a good job. Mick, who had done special effects and all different things, did all the work for them for free. Another person, and he's done special effects with Friday the 13th and Freddy Krueger's. So he's
Okay.
right there, Top Gun, if you looked him up. But I think what's nice about it is they left everything open so that it could be resurrected again. And the cool thing is, you know, I actually think that the Elias Voorhees could carry a film because the character they're created is really interesting. You know, you speak, there's this presence, which was my presence to begin with naturally in part 6, but they leave it so that, you know, you could do something goofy with Elias Voorhees and Jason coming back. It still would be a Friday the 13th, but just the way they connected the dots or they connected the blood was really cool.
Maybe they'll go on vacation together.
Hey, never know. Like father, like son, they say, right?
Yeah.
Take your kid to work day.
Exactly. Well, you know, the cool thing is, the very end of it, the very, very end of it is really cool because I've got gloves on that are cut off, so my fingers are out. They're all greasy and yucky looking just from being out in the woods. But I'm actually burning a photo of Tommy Jarvis, which is Tom Matthews from part 6.
Yes.
Kind of interesting, you know. And at the very end of the trailer, you see that,
Yeah.
and that's a real photo of Tommy. I don't know if you know. I love Tommy. Just so you, for the record, Tom Matthews, his wife. You know, my wife and all 4 of us went out to dinner and honky tonkin, you know, down in Tennessee. So he's an amazing human being. But they've got me burning a photo of him. I don't know if he knows that because Tommy Matthews. He played in a part with a film, Never Hike Alone, which was a fan film. And so he wasn't able to really participate in this one, but I don't know if he knows that he's being burned in the end of it. Love you, Tommy.
Well, CJ, thank you very much for your time for talking with us today. We greatly appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you, Mark.
What?
Kev.
That's right. Just
What?
me. Just me.
Yeah. I like all your memorabilia in the background now that I look around.
Wait, before
You
you go. You got that sign for me.
Nice.
See it? Your little hockey mask?
You
It
know what?
hangs on my wall, man.
Keep that to yourself.
Right on.
But
Well,
you guys, listen, I appreciate you guys even inviting me onto your podcast. I apologize for the confusion on Friday. Ruby and I got things crossed as far as left and right. And I'm on the phone at 6 o'clock doing a podcast thinking I got everybody covered. And she's like, well, I guess there was confusion. I go, no, there wasn't. I talked to the guy. You know, no, he didn't. I go, yeah, he did. I mean, I've even seen the podcast already. And she's like, well, we messed up. I go, no, you messed up. Don't put we in me. That's me. M-E, not. You don't take that M and turn it upside down and make a W and say we. You know, so, you know, I'm glad you guys could get this in today. And you know what? I won't be to Calgary next year, but maybe the year after that I'll be back up. I am doing Monster Mania in Maryland in the first weekend of October.
Okay.
Okay.
Otherwise, I do Texas Frightmare next year in May, I believe it is, 2020.
That's the one we're thinking of going to.
Yeah.
Well, if you do, I will tell you that my good friend Kane Hodder will be there with myself, and we'll be doing a photo op together, just him and I together with the fans.
Right
Okay.
on.
Sweet.
Thanks again, and have yourself a good night.
Get to that horse
Good luck
shit.
with the horses.
No, I got to go shovel shit, man. Somebody's got
Okay.
Right on.
See you,
Thank
bud.
very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Groovy.